And these women were really psyched up to have a really positive experience. And they kind of all came out with this standard, it was okay, the midwives are nice, but, or the stitches weren't too bad. And I was like,
Right.
it just seemed to be the same standard care that I wouldn't ever call care.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm Tracy Donegan. Freebirth, also known as unassisted birth, is a growing phenomena where women choose to opt out of maternity services and give birth without a midwife or medical personnel. So, what's behind this increase? Today, I'm speaking with Tehseen O'Donnell, who gave birth to her first baby at home recently without a midwife, and we'll discuss what led her to make this decision. And her answers may surprise you. And now I bring you Tehseen O'Donnell.
Right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of the Tracy Donegan podcast. And I am really excited to have a very special guest on here today who's going to talk to us about birthing outside of the system. So some people call it free birth, some people call it unassisted birth. But Tehseen O'Donnell, welcome to my podcast. I am really, really fascinated to hear about your journey to giving birth without a doctor, without a midwife, doing it under your own steam. Tell me everything about it. How did you get there?
Thank you, Tracy. It's a lovely intro. I suppose it's a bit of a long journey that kind of wound up happening organically anyway. As you know, I trained as a doula when I was a nursing student. And even though I love being a nurse, especially over the last few years, it's just not what it's made out to be anymore. And I found that especially true when you're pregnant and you're having a baby, and it's not the place I wanted to be when having my babies. And I suppose through seeing women's healthcare as a professional and in a doula role, and also as a student nurse seeing deliveries in maternity hospitals, I was like, no way, not for me. So I then had the privilege of working with a wonderful mum as her postpartum support a couple of years back, and she had a free birth. And I'd always heard the term, and I always thought that I'd probably have a home birth. My mum was a midwife. I only found out actually a couple of weeks before I had my baby that my grandma was the local lay midwife in our local village. And it never dawned on me, but it was always, I suppose, in my subconscious that there is this lineage of women must be in my blood, because otherwise I don't know how I got here. But yeah, after working with that mum, I really put my kind of thinking hat on to be like, actually, I don't really like the way things are. And my birth doula experiences, kind of when they were in the hospital, they all ended up the same. And you saw the same, I don't know what you'd call it really, I suppose, challenging behavior of healthcare professionals.
Tell
And
me
I was
more.
just,
Tell me more about. I guess you alluded to a little bit of what you had seen as a student nurse, and then what you had seen in the hospitals as a doula. So what were you seeing that was changing your mind about how you would bring your own babies into the world?
I suppose the biggest word would be coercion, and lack of informed consent. Um, and even like in both professional roles, I found myself feeling useless because I'd prepared these moms really well. I worked with them, whether it was preparing them with antenatal classes or like your gentle birth classes, or just a general, this is what to expect when you go to hospital, or preparing for births in any way. And these women were really psyched up to have a really positive experience. And they kind of all came out with this standard, it was okay, the midwives are nice, but, or the stitches weren't too bad. And I was like,
Right.
it just seemed to be the same standard care that I wouldn't ever call care. And then I saw that from the other end of it as a nurse as well, of like, there's only so much I can do for you because I'm in a system that's not letting me do what I can do for you. So yeah, living in that was an interesting being pregnant and being in the system while not having anything to do with the system was interesting.
Oh, I get that. And it's interesting when like just about what you're saying, from and what you were seeing from the outside is what so many midwives unfortunately see from the inside, and
Yeah.
it's why so many midwives are leaving, because they
It's an
they
exodus,
they
isn't it?
they understand the potential there is this huge potential as midwives, as nurses, to support women in a way that is just us standing back and letting them do their thing and
Yeah.
encouraging them to do their thing. But it's when the system dictates, as a midwife, how you can care for somebody. That was never part
Yeah.
of the deal. Anyone that's become a
No,
nurse or
you're
becomes a
pushed by
midwife,
policies.
you're in it because you care. You care about people.
Yeah.
You don't want to be constrained by a system that really doesn't care, really, at the end of the
No,
day.
and it's not even just the policies, it's the whole way it's run. There's no faith in a woman's ability to A, know that she knows what she's doing, or B, that even if she does, well, you probably shouldn't shout so loud, sweetheart, because you're disturbing everyone else. And that condescension, I remember
Yeah.
I attended a free birth while I was pregnant with this little dude. And it was wonderful. I was just a supportive role, and it really made me like 100% sure that it was the right decision for me. But I remember I was watching One Born every minute after, and I was like, oh my
Oh.
God, how did I used to watch this and like fall in love with the idea of being a midwife when you rewatch it later on and it's like, oh my God, such cruelty.
Yeah, you see it through a very different lens.
Very, yeah.
So tell me, you got to a point where you're thinking, yeah, the traditional hospital birth or even midwife led or home birth is not for me. So I can see how a lot of women will go and say no, thank you to hospital birth, but we'll find a middle ground at a birth center, which of course in Ireland is very difficult to access.
Yeah, Lucky
And
Jack's over
but
there.
then a lot of women will decide on home birth. So even with home birth being a much more, mom is more autonomous, like if you're in her space, why was that not enough for you? Why did you want to just like, yeah, we're just gonna go
Yeah,
completely off
it's a
grid, literally?
funny one, yeah, exactly. That's the whole point. I really found, and like that, I've colleagues I've worked with, home birth midwives who are lovely, um, you know, but I always felt like I would work with you, but I wouldn't want you at my birth. And that's
Hmm.
nothing against them. It's all against like home births, especially in Ireland. They're not this lovely, romantic idea all the time. They're mostly, hello, they're mostly let's bring the policies to your bedside. And just because it's your own
Yeah.
bed doesn't mean those policies change. And especially in the last year or so here, now I know there are trainings going on at the moment, reinstating water birth, but even that was taken away as a choice in
Mm.
Ireland. The constraint on your geography, that was being threatened last year about not being an option if you're outside a certain distance from maternity hospitals, which, let's face it, when there's 3 maternity hospitals in Dublin and the next one is like 2 hours away, everyone's going to be off limits for having that access. And every woman, like,
Mm.
Freebirth isn't for everybody. I was talking to a friend recently and she was like, if I was in the wild, I don't think I could do it. I need someone. I have a few other things going on and I don't have the support. Fair enough. She might need someone who is professionally, clinically trained, and that's fine. But for me, I really felt like I kind of thought for a while, like as soon as the stick turned pink, I was like, well, I'm a mum now and I have to make good choices. So I was
Mm.
fully against kind of having anything to do with the system. And I'm not like, I'm what maybe some people might call scrunchy rather than crunchy. But I really did feel like it wasn't it wasn't really a medical thing. Pregnancy and birth. It's not medical. It's a beautiful natural process that is part of so many women's lives for millennia. And yes, there are certain things that can happen, but there are also certain things that you can do to prevent all the big scary things happening as well. And I really found, especially talking to dads, that all those scary interventions, when you talk through it with them and they say, actually, that might have been caused because of X or Y, or, maybe too much observation, they really did get it, that actually when you take away those things, you're more likely to have things go the way you want them and without the big scary things. So I was like, and my husband was fully on board from day one. Like he liked the idea of home birth. Once I explained it to him about what a free birth was, he was like, yeah, sure, absolutely. As long as he kind of wanted someone there as well. But I was like, well, we can do it ourselves. I did have like a wise woman with me, and we eventually had his sister come and see us as well, come down and see the whole thing as well, and that was lovely. But it was the people that we wanted in our space, and I was completely hands off the entire time. So literally, going back to your actual question, I made the decision that, like, I obviously was still working as a nurse, so to get my mat leave I'd have to see a doctor at some point, just paperwork reasons. So I eventually went to my GP, and like at like 17 weeks, I was like, oh gosh, very late. Oh well, Christmas was in the way. I didn't want to disturb you. I know how busy you are. So I got signed off that I was indeed pregnant, even though I hadn't had a period in 20 weeks or whatever, and was visibly getting heavier. So I did go for one scan at 7 weeks. Just, nurse brain didn't turn off, and I wanted to make sure there was definitely something there. But apart from that, that was kind of my interactions in pregnancy with the medical system.
So that was it. So you had, okay, so you've already answered like a couple of my questions. So that was your only interaction with the system, was the scan initially. Well, your GP and the scan.
And the scan was just with a private ultrasound clinic, and the GP, he did refer me out to the maternity hospital, but I'm going to let you in on a funny little thing. I didn't hear from them. I was home and home, and then when I did have to go and get signed off for work and stuff, that they're obviously going to want me to go in or whatever, and it's fine. We'll just do our own thing, but still be in the system, like a lot of free birth moms do. So, and then at that point, I was like, if I bring up home birth, then maybe I can chat to one of the midwives I know, and maybe they'll be my home birth midwife. But I never heard from them. And I did the booking email thing because I was like, better do the right thing. And then I was like, actually, weeks have gone on and I've never heard back from them. So that's fine. That's the universe saying, good choice.
Hey there, if you're enjoying this conversation and are passionate about making the transition to motherhood as easy as possible, the best way to support our work is to subscribe and share this episode with other amazing women in your life. Your support to us is so important and helps us reach more mothers with empowering content. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button and spread the love.
But it led me to be a little bit concerned as well, because, okay, fair enough, I was going to do my own thing anyway. But what does that mean? Is there a whole cohort of women out there who have been ignored and have to chase up being looked after then as well from the mainstream maternity hospitals? I thought that was a bit weird, but very grateful for it as well.
Yeah, that worked in your favor, but I agree that there is absolute concern there that there are other women who might be fallen through the cracks and aren't being seen until like way later. Yeah, that's not exactly acceptable. And I mean, you would hope again that women would be following up, but if you're and if you're new to the country and trying to navigate the system as well, and maybe English isn't even your first language, you've got more challenges. Yeah. So So, okay, so you've already told me your husband was completely on board. So, did you keep this a secret or did you tell certain, because you know that like what I say to people is don't tell anyone about your plans for home birth or for
No,
not planning
exactly.
medication because you just end up defending your decision the whole time
Everyone's
and it's
judgment
such
and
a waste of
choices.
energy. Yeah.
Yeah, massively. You have enough time, hard time, using up the protein you eat for the baby. Never mind using your brain power to feed off other people's energies for their bad stories. I
Yeah.
was pretty open, probably more open than most. My mum's side of the family were were like, oh wow. I remember I told everyone this time last year actually at Christmas that I was pregnant, and I was a big family gathering on Christmas Eve, and I gave my auntie her surrogate grandma card, and they're like, oh, where you booked in? I was like, sofa. So that was met with a few like, oh God, really? And then a few,
Right.
yeah, I wouldn't expect anything other than that from you. And but that was fine. And even
So
at
you
work,
have
like
a
I told everyone
history of this kind of behavior.
maybe
Okay.
not a big
It was
fan of
expected by
authority.
some of your relatives.
Yeah. My dad's side, on the other hand, were a bit different. His partner's a pediatrician. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah, they were told that I hired private midwives story, and that was fine. Very little questions were asked
Hmm.
anyway, so.
Yeah. Yeah. And
But yeah,
they
for the
were still
most
able to
part,
sleep
I
at
was
night.
pretty. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. And you still get the, oh God, I was so worried about you that whole time.
So then tell me about labor itself. Like,
Ah,
tell me, like,
labor
how did
was.
it, yeah, I want to hear all about it.
Well, let's just say I had all intentions of having a gentle birth, of having a really serene time. My last three ladies that I looked after had like either really short labors, fetal ejection reflex, water births, and I was like,
Mhm.
well, obviously I've been to so however many births now, and I've seen how it should be, and mine will be just bliss. Now, looking back, it was great. It was exactly the birth that I needed and wanted, but it was much louder than I expected.
Mm.
I was about 15 hours in labor, which is fine, first baby, that's okay. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, it was definitely walking through the change of becoming maiden to mother,
Hmm.
especially when you've worked in the birth world. You have so much expectations of yourself and how it's going to be. But yeah, it
Yeah.
was a bit different. But yeah,
Hmm.
my contractions started on the 7th of July. I thought that was a bit cool. And I was very excited and getting everything ready, and then it got to like midnight. I was like, I was all back to back. There was no breaks, no,
Oh.
take 10 minutes to watch a bit of stand up. And I had great plans of
Mm.
baking a birthday cake for him. And like I said, my sister-in-law was meant to come down, and I had a friend who was a doula who was meant to be my doula, and then I had a dear friend who was like my birth attendant, wise woman, birth keeper, whatever you want to call it. She did come, and at the very, very end, my sister-in-law arrived. It's really sweet, actually. The whole pregnancy, she'd been asking loads of questions and really interested, and like she's only 26, and she was like, they
Wow,
haven't had
lovely.
many babies in the family, and she was just fascinated. And like I did a mother blessing, and she came to that, and she was like, this is a whole world of wow. And one thing I will
Hmm.
say that really impressed me, when we were back in bed after the baby arrived, she first words out of her mouth was, I am never doing that in a hospital. So proud moment. But yeah, he arrived just after 2:30 on the Saturday the 8th in the afternoon in the toilet floor. So not quite the serene water birth that I was expecting, but he came perfectly anyway. And like that, there was a little bit of meconium in the waters, which when I looked, it's so funny. I have to start explaining birth like it's almost like a faith, because and
Mm.
that maybe that's a strong word, and I know obviously with you guys in America that brings up a whole bunch of topics, but it really is, because I don't have any I didn't really have any fears even when I saw the meconium in the waters. I had no fears except for those few little things that every new mum is going to come across, like, oh, I wonder, will baby be well? I wonder if there's anything that I should have looked for that maybe wouldn't have even come up on a scan. You know, most people have those little things in the back of their head anyway. But apart from that, I had no real fears about birth. I had no real fears about the baby. When I saw the meconium, I did think for a minute, okay, maybe things need to speed up if they can. But that quickly came off, and I was back into, you know, really innate animalistic mum mode. And I was in the pool for a good bit, and I don't know if you can swear on this, Tracy, but the first words out of my
Right, yeah.
mouth when I got in the water were F fentanyl. It was
Oh,
magic. It was the
cool.
only break I had when I got in the water. And that was my gentle moment. But yeah, it was gas. I got it in and out of the water a little bit. I had a little bit of vomiting towards the end, and that pressure then eventually released my waters, probably about an hour or so before baby arrived. And then I got up again to go to the bathroom, and my husband was like, I can see his head. So we were like, get on the floor, put some mats down. I still haven't got the heart to get rid of my bloodstained yoga mat. But yeah, he arrived in the bathroom, perfect, and, you know, voice straight away. And yeah, there was probably more poo than blood, but hey, that's okay. He was perfect. And it's really funny, even when I said that to a friend recently, that like he had the meconium, and she was like, oh goodness, that would have been so scary. And I know my little boy got taken for a few hours afterwards, and so he didn't start breastfeeding. He was taken, you know, all those cascade of things that happen when you don't have that instant contact. And the day after he was born, he had like a little green vomit. But after that, like, he didn't have any problems eating, breathing, nothing. He was perfect. So, you know, these big scary things don't have to be so scary. And yeah, like, he's magic. He's 5 months old now, and we're good.
So, and he having a little bit of, it's dinner time. He's having dinner.
Dinner time, yeah, afternoon snack at this stage.
It's like,
Boy
it is.
eats
It's
like a
afternoon snack.
15-year-old boy, not a 5-month-old boy.
I have two boys. I know I feel like they all have wooden legs, you know, because the amount of food they can put away. So, was there any point during your labor, or even, you know, when you've kind of talked to your partner about it later, and the people who were there, was anyone did anyone have a moment of, oh, are we really
I'll
doing
tell you.
this? Or
I'll tell you a funny one, actually. It got to, my friend was here, and it got to 25 past 2, and I asked the time. We have like a little alcove where our bathroom meets our kitchen, and she was sitting there, and I was kind of crouched down, and I said, what time is it? And it's funny. I was born at 3:30 in the afternoon. My husband was born at 4:30. And we're all July babies in the house. So when it got to the time, and I asked the time, and she said it was 25 past 2, and I said, okay, he's going to be here at 1/2 past. She told me a few days later, she's like, oh shit, she's going to tear in half. But apart from that was literally the only, like, which I didn't. But yeah, that was the only real moment of, oh God.
And did you have any tearing?
I had a very small little graze, and it's funny, like, I think every woman really needs to look and see what's going on down there afterwards, which we're not really given the opportunity to in hospital, I don't think. But to be honest, like, I feel like it looks just fine, and it looks probably better than it did before. No, mate.
Well, I think that is probably one of those moments where you're thinking, okay, so everything goes great, and now I have this gorgeous baby, and it's been a perfect labor, and then it's like, okay, but I actually did need a couple of stitches, you know. So where you kind of had that conversation with your partner, listen, there are certain instances where we're not going to have a big discussion, but we're going to hospital. So
yeah, there were definitely a few
so
things
everyone was on the same page.
Yeah, exactly. There are a few things, and I think that's the really important thing with partners, for birth anyway, like, to be on the same page. As, like, realistically, there's not going to be much that's going to make me ever transfer. If I need stitches, if I was torn in half, like like she thought I was going to be. I'd probably get a nurse friend to maybe come with some sutures. But luckily, you know, most things heal. The little tear that I did have, you know, I had beautiful aftercare as well as is a massive part of it. I had like herbal compresses every day for 2 weeks. And that like healed right up. But you know, there's no comparison to, I was talking to my cousin there. She had a baby a few weeks before me, and she was, you know, sitting very tight and uncomfortable there. And it's like, you okay? And she's like, no, I'm still sore. It's like, oh. So, no, I will take my little tear and my herbal compresses over over that worry any day. But yeah, no, we had a few conversations about, you know, realistically, what would you do if? And thankfully, you know, we put the work in to prepare ourselves for all of it, and we were stocked up on everything that we might need, and we were good.
And everybody's healthy and well.
Yeah.
And then, so you would have, I guess you have to, don't you, you probably had to see your GP then, did you, a couple of weeks later? Or how did your GP react to,
that
because
end
that's
of
the whole
things,
thing, isn't it?
that end of things was a little tricky. And had I known, no, it was all good, but had I known that it would kind of impact my bubble, I probably would have not bothered quite as early. I thought I was doing the right thing, you know, nurse to nurse. I called our PHN on day 4, our public health nurse, on day 4, and I was like, I've had a baby at home. I'd like to have him checked. Some people decide not to. I thought, you know, let's start the paper trail, so when we do register him, you know, it won't be quite a big deal.
Easy.
And then she phoned my GP to get my history. And my GP then called me back to say, Tehseen, you had your baby at home with nobody. Okay, are you okay? Is your baby well? It's like, yeah, I had the most wonderful experience. Thank you so much for calling. Now, I say this very calm and quite chipper now. My poor husband, I got a missed call from the GP, and I was like, look, oh my God, they're going to put me in jail. Which obviously they wouldn't. But the postpartum head is not a place for paperwork, which I now know. And next time I would definitely be getting himself to be doing all of that. Now, in fairness, we were treated quite nicely. I know some people have had not so nice experiences. But thankfully, we were good. What they did then was, you know, legally, my GP was like, I can't see you until you've been seen by a gynecologist and your baby's been seen by a pediatrician. And I was like, I genuinely am happy to show up to the GP surgery and show you that I'm happy and well and baby's really well. But also, I don't want to leave the house on, you know, anytime soon. And I'm definitely not taking him to A&E, which was the option that he gave me. And I was like, realistically, I have no need to go to A&E. Why would I bring a newborn into, you know, like either a general or maternity hospital? So he said, okay, well, let me have a think, and I'll see if I have a contact of a pediatrician in one of the maternity hospitals. So they sent us to the baby care clinic. And a few panicked phone calls on my end. It was fine, you know, but it was also like, this is so needless. My baby is so well. And even in the baby care clinic, don't need that. The first thing they said to us was, wow, he's so alert at like 12 days old. And that was the biggest thing, like, wow, he's amazing. He's so alert. And I don't know, maybe they were just placating us a little bit, but the fact that I'd said, no, did it at home all by ourselves, blah, blah. I was like, wow, he's amazing. Okay, yeah, I'll take that. But yeah, so we went to the baby care clinic, and then he was seen by a doctor, seen by audiology for his hearing test, which he passed, obviously, and all that jazz. And then because I didn't really feel the need to get checked out in A&E myself, like I said, little tear, nothing major, felt really well. My postpartum, the early days were like actual bliss, you know. I was so looked after, and I wasn't gonna break that bubble by being inspected. So I went to, I did eventually, after maybe 2 weeks, go to a gynecologist just here locally, and she was really nice, and she spent about 2 minutes with me and was like, I know you know what you're doing, so do you want me to check you out, or are you happy? And I was like, have a look if you want. Yeah, may as well get it on paper. She was like, okay, Grant, hop up, we'll have a look, make sure you don't need anything from me, and send you on your way. And she was really lovely. I was like, I think half the battle as well is using the right language. I was like, no, he pinked up straight away. His tone was great. I felt really good. Breastfeeding has started. And she was like, okay, no problem. I'll write you a letter to say you and your baby are definitely. Oh, that was the other thing. Like, you have to prove that baby is yours and you're postpartum, which I think by the leaky boobs and, the infant attached to those boobs are pretty obvious things. But anyway, so that was fine. And I'd probably go back to her again in a heartbeat, because she was really lovely and like didn't really care in a nice way. She was like, you know what you're doing. It's okay.
Yeah.
So that was the legal bit. The actual registration thing, I have to say, if you're going to do Freebirth, do it in Wicklow, because when we went to the registry office in Kildare, she was like, you don't have the form. I know I don't have the form. That's because I didn't use the form. But the form needs to exist before we can register your baby. I was like, okay, that's fine. But I have a letter from our doctor. I have a letter from this doctor. I have a letter from my chiropractor. I have the scan that I did to prove I was pregnant. I know of other people who've had less and gotten the paperwork done, no problem. So I walked out of there and I was like, Killian, we're having 10 kids just to piss these people off. I chatted to another friend of mine who'd done it the same way. And she said the best thing to do is actually just talk to a real person in the office, and maybe the superintendent will create the form. Because the thing that got to me the most in that registry office was the fact that she said, look, we're trying to create a person here. I was like, oh, sorry, no, I just did that.
You just have to do the paperwork.
That was my job, actually. It took a while, and but anyway, so I was like, no, I'm not going back there. And I must say, the guys in I don't know if it's probably not okay to shout it out, but the guys in the Wicklow registry office were lovely. And really nice when we went in. Yeah. So funny. I was talking to another friend there a few weeks ago in a bit of a mummy group, and she was like, I'm in Wicklow as well, I'll go there. And they picked up the phone and was like, oh, Tehseen, is that you? So I've already made a bit of a name for myself again there. But yeah, it was all fine in the end. They sent me a list of things I needed to create the form that I didn't have because I wasn't whatever. And I sent them more than they needed, and they made the form, and then I could go in and register. And I think looking back, I wouldn't have done it as soon. I would have just waited for my little bubble to kind of burst naturally. But realistically, it was quite easy. I think if you are going to go down the Freebirth route, and you want, proof of, paperwork, I think it's probably best just to have a paper trail. See a doctor of some kind when you're pregnant. Some people use chiropractors as well, but it's not always guaranteed that you'll get the paperwork the other end. But yeah, go to a friendly gynae once, prove you're pregnant and then prove you're postpartum. Some people are happy enough going to A&E, but I would not go. Like, the whole reason I didn't want to have a baby in hospital, was to not have a baby in hospital.
Yeah.
So yeah, it wasn't quite as bad looking back on it, but it was a bit of an effort when you're, full of all those hormones, and you're just worried about everything anyway. So yeah.
Yeah. So for any of our listeners or viewers today who are considering, what would you say were the biggest benefits for you to Freebirth?
I have found a profound increase in my trust in myself. I've never been a particularly anxious person, but like, as a woman, I think it's in you a little bit to be worried about certain things. And I really believe that I'm even parenting now, you do it innately now. I really feel like no one questioned my choices in my pregnancy and my birth. No one interfered with me. I had no cervical checks. I bought a Doppler for myself that I used a couple of times towards the end, just for, actually more than anything for like the comfort of hearing his little heartbeat. It wasn't to check if it was still there. It was just to see and have a listen and say a little hello. I had no medication in labor, which I genuinely think has shown up in him, because like I said about the pediatricians in the hospital, the first things they said was, wow, he's so alert. And like, apart from the whinging that he's doing right now, he's a very chill baby. And it's really given me confidence in being a mom. I lost my own mum a few years ago, and I really thought it would be a lot harder to be a mum without it. And it is hard, but I do have a big boost in confidence in my ability to do it myself because of having a free birth. And it also, it brought me and my husband together a lot more as well. Like, I've chatted to dads who've had the experiences in hospitals and even at home, and they're kind of made to feel so useless. Like, you be a dear and unpack the nappy bag, and we see if we can find a job for you later on and stay up the other end, love. You wouldn't want to see what's going on.
Oh, no. Yeah.
And that really bothers me, like men are the reason that they're there, you're part of the person that's made the family, and they're your little family to advocate for and protect. So it really bothers me. But in this scenario, like, we've become so much closer. He really respects the way I want to mother. His bond with my baby is our baby. His bond is amazing, and him seeing me go through all the stages of labor, I suppose raw. Like, it's not that you have to do things one way to get your partner's respect, but my God, he respects me so much, and it's not because I said no to medication. It's because I trusted my body, and so that's amazing as well.
Yes, especially in today's world where we don't have a lot of trust in ourselves and our body, and because we're not very kind to our body as well.
No, exactly. Yeah, it really is that. It's I think I don't know if it already exists, but like, this intuitive parenting style is kind of where I feel I'm at, and I do think it's because of the free birth. And no one's opinions are forced on me. I didn't have to. I really feel like when you're in hospital, when you're birthing, you almost play a role, like you're on show. And I didn't have any of that. It was raw and real, and I got everything I wanted out of it.
And would you do it again?
Absolutely. And even more so, I'd be 100% wild next time. Maybe one scan in case we I wonder, is it another boy or a girl?
Or two.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a point as well, actually. I was fully convinced I was going to have twins. So like that, that was part of the reason I went for a scan initially, was because I was like, okay, I want all the information. Not scared of having twins at home, but it would be nice to know. And maybe I'll go for another scan towards the end to see what kind of position we might be in. Or better yet, I'll, do some belly mapping once I have a better picture of what's going on. And once you have all the information, you can make your choices whatever way you want.
And so now you look back on your first experience, and you already spoke about kind of, keeping the postpartum bubble intact as long as possible. What other tips would you give someone who, now that you've had the experience, like, to look out for? Here are the things kind of that can make things a lot easier on this if you decide to take this pathway.
Absolutely. There's definitely, like you said at the start, the telling people thing. If you're going to be 100% upfront with people, make sure it's the right people. We were really lucky, even with my husband's dad. He was really good. Like, I thought I'd get, all kinds of stick from being honest. No, we did say that we were maybe have a midwife, but we never did, and it was fine. But definitely protect your pregnancy bubble as well as your postpartum bubble, because that's yours, and everything that you're feeling, it goes into your body and it sits somewhere.
Mm.
And if you have lots of fear coming up, you have to work through it. I think birth is an amazing process, the way things come up in it that you maybe haven't dealt with, or maybe you did deal with, and it's going to serve you in birth. So definitely protect that angle of things of, if you're going to tell everybody the truth, tell the truth in a filtered kind of way. Just for your own sanity. Like, it's not lying. It's just, you want to keep your safe little cave safe.
Yeah.
I would definitely put boundaries up with certain people, because, again, protecting your little space. I would seriously get a postpartum doula for longer than 3 weeks. Get them for a couple of months if you can. And Freebirth is free, right? So whatever you're planning on spending on your birth in a hospital, spend it on a doula. Oh, that's the other thing. Make sure that your partner, your husband, whoever, make sure they eat. Make sure they're looked after as well, because they can't look after you if their, blood sugar is in their boots. Because it's a long day, birth is hard on everybody at a certain experience. And that's one thing I'll definitely be taking in the future. I think poor Killian only had about 8 crackers the day this fella was born. So that's not enough.
Oh, running on adrenaline. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So tell me, how did breastfeeding go with, the initial latch and all that good stuff? Because again, we see it's so difficult within the hospital environment, and you had nobody there. So tell me how that went.
It's a challenge and a half, isn't it? Again, if people asked me about breastfeeding, and I kind of just said, yeah, of course, yeah. My mum breastfed me, so nothing against anyone else's choices, but it was always just the natural choice for me. And he latched straight away after he was born, which was beautiful. I know some people do have challenge with that. I've had a few dodgy boob days. I did go to a wedding a few months ago, and that led to almost mastitis, not quite. But again, having resources, having the right people to reach out to for a little bit of help and information, and then you can look after yourself. Breastfeeding started wonderfully, and it's still going, obviously. The attire.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, we're I have to say, the only thing that has come up for me that I don't like about it is that I've gotten some breast psoriasis. But I'm pretty sure that's probably like a diet thing that I need to work through myself. But I have to say, I actually love it, and it's a wonderful bond. All my friends who have babies are like, wow, you guys, he clearly needs you so much and wants to be with you, and he settles so instantly when he's with you. And like, that is so the boob.
Yes. The boob solves everything.
Yeah, no, the boob solves everything, absolutely. And like that, he's definitely very interested in everyone else's food now, so we are moving on slightly, but like, I have to say, the boob at night has been the solver of so much. I don't know how anyone gets up and does bottles, whether you're expressing and cleaning the bottles, or you're pumping, or you're making formula. I don't know how anyone does it. I would not be able to sit here and have a real conversation with you. Most days I don't feel like I have a brain. I would be even more so impacted if I was doing that. Like, we're co-sleeping as well, which has been a serious benefit to the breastfeeding, because there's no waiting for a cry. Like, it's so true. I remember hearing someone say years ago that I'd wake up like minutes before he'd wake up. And I was like, oh, wow, I wonder if that's true. Or maybe you just have really good instincts. And it is true. I don't know, maybe they do stir, maybe it's hormonal, but that need is like put out there, and then you wake up, and then 2 minutes later, he's ready to find your boob. And after maybe from week 10, week 12, we really mastered the outside lying, and that has been magical for getting rest and not having to worry so much. I was kind of sitting for sitting mainly upright in
Oh,
bed with him for the first few weeks, just surrounded by cushions. But again, like the bed has been magical for breastfeeding. It's
yeah.
really given us the time. And I
Mm-hmm.
found, again, a supportive husband has been really beneficial, because I know even if it's coming from a lovely place of like, oh my God, you're so tired, or you're sore, or your poor boobs are in bits, what are we going to do? You're complaining about a problem that can be solved. People do recommend changing or even pumping. And I I've been really lucky that I haven't had any of those kind but unwanted comments. It's always been,
Yeah.
you're doing so well. It's magic, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it does, it gets easier. I think the first few days, no matter how
Oh,
easy
definitely.
breastfeeding is going for you, it's like everything is tricky. But then, you get
There's
into,
still
3 months
days.
later
Oh
and
my
6 months
goodness,
later, and it's like,
absolutely. Like,
oh
just
yeah,
and just when you think you're
but
getting over
it's so
one little
much
hurdle,
easier.
something
Like,
else comes up.
yeah, they
But
change the
it's true.
rules. Like
Like,
they keep
yes,
moving the goalposts.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, the gift keeps on giving. But no, it's true. Like, we've had a really good experience, even with the not so nice stuff. Like, I've had blisters, the
Mm.
few little bouts of almost mastitis, but it hasn't been enough that I'd want to give up. It's been, what can I do to fix this to make it easier?
So are we thinking about doing this again then, or
Oh,
several more times? Do we
definitely.
think?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. It's so funny. We've always talked about having like a decent sized family anyway, but definitely after the birth, it's so funny. My husband was really like, let's do that again. And he was
Mm.
crying in bits, like more so than I was at the labor. And he was, oh bless him, he was such a good support, but so incredibly moved emotionally by it. But he's all up for doing this again, and so am I.
And is there anything? So I mean, it sounds like, it went as, perfect as it could have gone. But was there anything that you would change if, next time around you think, oh, yeah, anything that you would might do differently?
Hmm. Is there anything I would do differently? I'd maybe get in the water a little bit sooner.
Oh, the
But then
water
again, maybe
is
not, because
heaven.
yeah, yeah, it is amazing, isn't it? I
Yeah.
genuinely don't think I'd do anything different, except maybe get a little bit more help in postpartum. Like that,
Hmm.
my husband works for himself, so going back to work, some days he's right next door, and some days he's hours away. So having a little bit more
Yeah.
help would be nice, and planning for that. But like, realistically, I wouldn't do anything differently.
Yeah. It's great to hear, and it's great to see someone coming out of a birth experience so, overjoyed and happy, and
That's what I'm
this is the way it's supposed to be.
supposed to be. Yeah, yeah. I left a voicemail for a friend. I think it must have been the day after. And she was, one of my more, I suppose, uh, by the books kind of a friend. And she replied to my voice note being like, "Are you sure you didn't have the drugs? Like, you sound blissed out of it." And I was like, "Yeah, I am. Like, I'm really happy." So you don't have to
Mhm.
not feel anything to feel good.
Yes. Yeah. That's so true. It's, yeah, and your own, bliss chemicals we have within are so
Oh yeah,
more powerful than anything you can get
so
by a
powerful.
syringe, or yeah.
Oh, and the only other thing I would do differently is have more easy food in the house. The breastfeeding hunger, I was not
Oh.
prepared for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's
So,
it.
Tehseen, where can people find you if we've got people want to learn more and moms want to learn more about your
Yeah.
experience, and
So I
what are you
actually,
doing? Tell us more about what you're doing.
while I was on my mat leave from the hospital, I set up a bit of a collective of women who offer all kinds of support to women who you don't have to be a free birth mom. You can be having home birth or hospital birth or going through any stage as a woman. We have homeopathic workers, we have holistic massage therapists, we have birth keepers and doulas, chiropractors. And it's so funny, everyone's kind of joined us organically. You know, it's been a bit of a stone down the hill of everyone wanting to be a part of it, because it's what's needed. We need our village. We need that sisterhood. You know, sometimes you're looking for a sister, sometimes you're looking for a bit of mothering, sometimes you need a friend, you know, to chat about menopause with. There's something for every woman in our collective, and our collective is Wild Mountain Mothering. We're based here in Ireland. We have people kind of all over the place covering birth and other supports. There's like things like sex ed there as well, photography, there's all kinds of everything. And it's kind of how it should be, you know. So we're at www.wildmountainmothering.com, and someone's just seen his daddy come home. So sick of me. But yeah, that's us. And like that, there's so many services that just make it a real team of sisters, and it's just magic. And you know, you can find us, and if there's something that you might need, more than happy to take you on, or maybe one of the other guys will, because I might be needed somewhere else.
He's gonna eat you up now. Tay, thank you so much for both of you for joining me today. Yeah, both of you. And I'll include all the details on the website and everything, so people can find you.
Wonderful.
But thank you again for sharing your little evening snack.
It's been a pleasure, Tracy, and it's just lovely to see you as well.
I know, it's always lovely to connect. It's always lovely.
Yeah, I have to say before I go, like, you got me through my first birth where I was more traumatized than the mom. Chatting to you made like such a big impact, like not only training with you, but listening to your wisdom, and like you've been a guru to me. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh gosh, no. I am like, when I hear about your experience, I'm like, yeah, I take my hat off to, especially in the world. It's just gone a bit of crazy day, but to really step into your own power and make those decisions, I think it's incredible. So I am very honored to know you, and I'm thrilled that we got this chance to spend some time together. And I know we will be talking more. We have more topics on the list that we will be chatting about in 2024. But thank you again.
Pleasure.
Take care.
Thank you so much, Tracy. Bye.
Take care.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. Remember, empowerment begins with knowledge. If you enjoyed our time together and want more content like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. So stay inspired, stay informed, and until next time, take care of yourself.